When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. And it won't do no good to be crying out loud, babe, or cursing the sky.
Hi, welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and I'm very happy. This is almost an annual event that Susan Tamulevich from New London Maritime Society and the Custom House is joining me today so we can have updates on what is happening in that part of downtown and also other projects that the Maritime Society is involved in. So welcome back again.
Very happy to be here. Nice to see you, Rana.
Yeah.
Wish I saw you more often.
Yeah, it seems like it's like once in winter on the show and once in summer in Sailfest.
Yeah, Sailfest and then,
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah, every so often.
Every
it
so
happens.
often, yeah.
So, and after election season, I always really like to have shows that are about like things that are happening in New London, not the huge projects, but the little things that we have dozens of in the city that really do make a difference.
Thanks.
So, so we mentioned you seem to have been at the Custom House for a long time.
Not decades, but a decade and a half.
So, how did you get involved in, the Maritime Society?
You know, that's a very, very unusual story. Years and years ago, when I moved back to Connecticut, my father was ill. I moved back, and I worked for 1 year in Stonington as a curator, and I was a garden historian, journalist, that sort of thing. And I had written a book that was published and about the Dumbarton Oaks Garden in Washington, D.C. It's a really wonderful design history, if I do say so myself.
Oh,
Really, it took a
I'll
long
have to look it up.
Well, it's good. It's really great, and it's got all the steps, and the owners of the garden in the 20s lived abroad. So the landscape architect Beatrix Farrand did everything, but instead of face-to-face discussions, she made maquettes and made photographs and wrote to them because they'd be in Sweden or Buenos Aires or something. So it's the most well-documented
Oh, wow.
evolution of a garden you could have. So it was like a wonderful, wonderful project. And just a little bit before that was published, I moved back to Connecticut, and I needed a job. And the book had been published, and in Stonington they said, well, it was actually reviewed twice in the New York Times. That's all they needed. They didn't care if I had museum experience or not. Although, when in Washington, I had worked a lot for the Smithsonian and also the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. So I did, but not as a curator. But I was hired there and met a lot of people, was fired there, went on to other things. And and years later, this wonderful woman, Marian Crepsio, with whom she lived in Stonington, and she is the person, she's the reason that the oysters are state
Oh, wow.
shellfish, I should say. And she died this past year. But she also is the person who was very instrumental in keeping Ellery Thompson's legacy going. She cared for him when he was an older person, she got to know him. And he was a fisherman, painter, author, right? And he was profiled twice in the New Yorker, so he was a bit of a celebrity too. So we did the very first Ellery Thompson show together, because I had remembered those pieces from the New Yorker or read them at some point. And that was a big deal, and she appreciated that. So years later, I don't know how long, 10 years later, when the Custom House, as I understand it, they couldn't get grants because they didn't have a professional staff anymore. It was just run by the board of directors. They said, we got to get somebody. And Marion had just given a talk there, and they said, who do you know? She said, oh, Susan would be great. So they asked me to come in. And, you know, I have a lot of varied background, and I did grow up in Branford, which is on the shore. I love all of that. So I thought it'd be a lot of fun. You know, when I got there, it was quite, it was not great. And, you know, you could just see that had been neglected for a little while. It really was wonderful and wonderful people. So it didn't take much, you know. I got there and it just started to grow, and it was a very happy thing. But there's always been some issue that has kept me. I always thought it would be 5 years, and now it's just about 16. But there's always some issue, and after the first 5 years, I guess, well, right away we got the lighthouse, New London Harbor Light, which had been held up for many years. That's through the Lighthouse Preservation Act, Historic Preservation Act of 2000. And in fact, Harbor Light was in the first group of lighthouses that were given by the National Park Service to worthy nonprofits, you know, it's sort of a competition. And it was awarded, but it was never given. The deed was never handed over because there was a lead paint issue inside the lighthouse, and they had to wait until 2009 to remove all that paint. So I was hired in 2008, and they just sort of joked that there's a lighthouse somewhere, but we don't know when. Next year, actually, because I'd been in DC, I got a call from a friend at the Park Service who said, guess what? You're going to get...
Wow.
Yeah. So you know, who knew anything about that? I barely knew anything about maritime history. Don't tell anyone, but, you know,
well, my guess is you know more now, 16 years later.
Yes, yes. And so we had this lighthouse, and that was all very exciting. But as you remember, there was a little dispute with the neighbors where they sued us for more than 4 years to keep the public out, the public which owns the property, the public which paid for it, which continues to own it, almost like a national park. And I could not leave during that. And then we just sort of got on our feet, and, you know, just one issue after another. And the most recent issue, I have to say, was I really wanted to get the museum cleaned up and in good shape and inside and out. And the roof failed last December. It was probably just after we met. Now, I did find a letter in the National Park Service nomination as a historic site for the Custom House, where in 1980 someone had written a letter saying, this building, you have to fix it, it's soaking inside, there's so much water damage. And even after the very first year it opened, there are letters in our archive from 1836 saying we were collecting water in buckets where it was coming through the roof. So you have a beautiful building with plaster walls, and you have water coming in from 1836. Oh my gosh! And they fixed the roof in the 70s. They sort of in sort of the GSA kind of government fashion, not right. And by the 80s, the water's pouring in. The government says we're getting rid of this building. Citizens rallied. We want to preserve it. One of the first big preservation efforts in New London. And they did. It was given to the city for $1, given to us. And in lieu of paying rent, we're responsible for all repairs, including, like, not maintenance, but the roof. And it was not so bad for a while. We got a water penetration study done in 2009, very carefully, doing all the steps. with John Marshall, expert preservation plasterer. You know, he just finished over at the Lighthouse Inn, all the beautiful plaster work. He did our place, and we were down to 2 rooms, the shop and the Lighthouse Gallery. And we had this roof failure last year, and all the places we had done are ruined again.
Oh.
So we had, so I can't leave now. We had planned for, it was the 40th, June to next June. This is our 40th anniversary year, and our board had very wisely planned that our campaign would be to replace the roof. We knew that there was going to be a problem. There was going to be a problem. And so we applied to the Palmer Fund and got $160,000 to start our campaign, which we thought the roof, and to replace the watch platform for the customs agent on the roof, the historic platform, and to do the interior finishes would be about $600,000. So here we had $160,000. Well, the roof failed, so there's $60,000 we had to spend on repairs, which will not be rolled into the next part because they're different. They're repairing a bad roof, and we need a new, good roof. So that's my current dilemma, and you know, we're working on it, and we have all sorts of wonderful plans for getting this done. But I'll tell you, we were just knocked sideways by that. It means every minute of my time is spent writing grants. You know what I mean? All the time. And answering grants, and these contracts, and it's not doing museum work, which I love, you know, and but we have a wonderful bunch of people who volunteer, and they keep it going all the time. And you know, I could not be there, and I won't be there because I'm going to get my foot operated on February, so I will be out for 2 months. They don't care. They're very competent, and they've taken ownership of the place. I love it. It's exactly what it should be. But for the roof.
Well, you know, this is a problem that we see all over. You know,
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of new buildings in New London right now, but there are a lot of old buildings that really, you know, have a lot better staying power than the newer ones.
Yeah.
Except that many of them have things like failing roofs and lead paint and, you know, stuff like that, that it's harder to get money for sometimes, or to get tax abatements for, than for, you know, shiny new stuff.
I was looking across the street today, and those big arched windows in the what used to be the antique center, one of them is out, and I guess they're going to replace that window right now. And I'm surprised. Those buildings across the street is a Hollinsky, or and the one where Right Path was. Those were so badly water damaged. I never thought they would be preserved, but they have been. And that, you know, our problem, our building is so solid and basically so good, but you can't have water coming in the roof. And once we get that fixed, we should be in pretty fine shape. And you're right, these buildings are built to last, and they just have to have the maintenance.
So when was the Custom House building built?
It was built on Christmas in 1832. The city fathers got together and they said, this is such an important city, second leading whaling port in the world, we have to have a proper custom house, because they kept burning down. And so they said, we want a fireproof gem on the waterfront.
Which is probably why, since Benedict Arnold was still to come.
Well, no, he had done it already, Benedict Arnold, but then at the like around the early teens, the building at the corner of Bank and State at the Circle on that south side, I guess you'd say, That's where it was, an upstairs
Oh.
office, and that burned down too. I think it burned down about 3 times. And Benedict Arnold, you're right, he did it, and some people said particularly because he wanted to get rid of his records, which were not, I guess there were issues with those records. So a waterproof, they used the term gem on the waterfront, and they got Robert Mills, who had apprenticed with Benjamin Latrobe and Thomas Jefferson, worked on the White House, and he'd also worked in South Carolina on a number of hospitals, and hospitals need to be fireproof. So he had the fireproof expertise, and he was also in on the evolution, the birth of the federal style of architecture. So he designed the Custom House and did these beautiful pen and ink and gouache drawings, which the museum actually owns, and that's.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful building to this day.
Building. Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful building. I'll say one thing about the drawings. I mean, I could go on forever. As you can tell, the motor mouth. I guess I'm home too much alone. I don't know. But, you know, the citizens saved the building. They went in there and they cleaned it. And even with the water damage, which was there all that time and continued on, they made this wonderful museum. And all donations, because a lot of the good stuff had gone to Mystic Seaport, you know. And what did the museum have? It had no collection, but people were so generous, and they continue to be so generous with these family treasures, and, you know, really wonderful. I mean, it's heartening. Every month or every couple of weeks, someone comes in with something they want to preserve, and that's our job there. So the museum was set up, and a man came in with something under his arm, and he left it with the docent at the door. He said, "I think you deserve this." I took it home for safekeeping. He had been the person who's in my office downstairs, the janitor. I'm in the old janitor's office.
Wow.
And I've met his daughter. He's since died. And she said he was very happy there. It's not like he haunts the place. He loved it there, and it's a happy vibe. And he came by and he said, "You know, I was afraid of what would happen to this building, so I took this home with me, but you should have it." It's the original drawings, about a dozen of them, of Robert Mills, the plan for the Custom House. And I mean, those don't exist anywhere except for in the National Archives. They really should not be anywhere else, but we happen to have them. And we have facsimiles on the wall when you come into the building, and it's part of our tremendously interesting and unusual archive up with the Frank McGuire Library that people, I think, might be a bit unaware of. But we have all kinds. We have that letter about the water coming in buckets to begin with. We have all sorts of things up there.
There was an article over the summer in the
Oh, yeah.
newspaper about the
That
ferry.
article was about that damage we had, and it was when the storm comes from a particular direction, and we only had it 3 times. We had it in December, we had it maybe in March, and then we had it just before that article, and we were prepared. We had our buckets out in the places where the water would come in, but we had that money, so we'd already commissioned an architect to start on plans, and we said, "Oh, we need emergency plans as well as plans," and then we used $60,000 of that money from the Palmer Fund so that we're able to pay for the repairs, which is unusual for us. But we were able to do it, and now we are about to launch a campaign.
So this is a good time for you to be here.
Oh,
So
that's always good.
So we'll do a little traveling, and we'll move on and talk about the various lighthouses that you've been involved with
Yeah.
over the last, several years, really, and it seems like it's a growing
Yeah.
number of
12
lighthouses.
or 13 now. Well, it must be 15 because it was 2009, so 13 years. Lucky 13.
So we have, so these are the
It's our
3
cake.
Yes, it's the cake. But it had all 3 lighthouses
Yes.
on it. And
I love
sort of placed right?
Yeah, no, that's
So
exactly right.
Yeah, so it's,
And there they are.
and there's the Harbor Light, which
Harbor Light, which used to sell lunches and all kinds of souvenirs right next door.
How
And,
long
and
ago was that?
that was probably, well, whatever that photograph is from, which is probably like 1880s. But yes, and we've done, in the last year, we've restored, well, 2 years ago, we had washed and repointed and fixed up the lighthouse in 2014-15. And then last year we washed it so that it's bright, clean again. People complain
Right.
about something 210 years old looking like it's 210 years old. I don't know why, but they want it to look new. So we washed it and we restored the door, the iron door, which was put in the 1836 or something like that. When it was originally the outside door, and then they built the keeper's cottage 25 years later, and then it was inside, and then they sold the keeper's cottage and got rid of the connecting way, which you can see in that older.
Yeah, you can kind of see that little
Yeah.
connector.
So that just shows you, well, it's a photograph, but it had to be after it has to be 1870, 1880 era.
And that is such a historic lighthouse that when the U.S. Post Office had lighthouse stamps, that was one of the stamps.
Most beautiful, not only the oldest, tallest on Long Island Sound. So that's a lot. And they say the fourth, it was a colonial lighthouse to begin with, 1761. But they rebuilt it in 1801. So it's a magnificent, wonderful lighthouse, and it's now in very good shape. We've just about finished the landscaping. We had to take down, there were some pine trees. The last of the series, we were trying to keep them alive, died. So I think it's probably fortunate we took it down before that storm.
Yeah. Well, we've had tons of storms recently. Oh, yeah.
Climate change, really, really severe in a way that's...
Yeah, we've had 4 inches of rain over the last 3 weeks. It's
Wow.
pretty outstanding. Although, had it been snow, how many inches would we have had?
I don't know. But anyway, Harbor
Yeah.
Light is great, and we give tours there year-round, and we are always making things better. And we put in a plaque a week ago because a woman had donated some money in memory of a young woman who loved the lighthouse. So we have a bench, and where those women are standing at the end of that planter wall, where we now have big grasses to sort of obscure the neighbors, or obscure us from the neighbors, I guess is more to the point. There is a long bench, and it is has a little plaque on it right now for her, which I love. I'm glad people. Honestly, when we went to restore that lighthouse, the good feeling and donations and the unions and everybody just could turn themselves inside out to say, we love this lighthouse, it means so much to me, and I'm going to get to go in it now. Thank you. And you can go in anytime. And we have $5 tickets for New London families and their kids. And to go in, it's a little bit expensive because you have to have somebody go over there, and we do have expenses with the lighthouse, but that's for the tourists.
Right.
For New Londoners, it's okay. Yeah, so we love that.
Now, is there access to the lighthouse from the water at this point, or is that
Well,
anything?
yeah, we have our riparian rights, and we have a pre-existing non-conforming dock we can prove was there. But when we tried to build the dock and received a rather splendid $165,000 grant from the state, the neighbors sued, and the DEP wouldn't give us a permit because there was an active lawsuit. And you would have thought that would solve the problem, because we could have brought people in by boat and they wouldn't go by people's homes at all.
And then parking along Pequot or whatever would not be an issue.
Well, it's a public beach.
Yeah.
Well, not a,
Yeah.
It's a private beach, right, 2 feet away. So why is that not a problem? And our having 5 people come to visit the lighthouse at a time a problem. I don't understand that.
The city
but
does, well, maybe it's the whole world, not just the city, but things don't always make sense.
They don't. They don't, but we're doing just fine. We do as many tours as we get asked to do. We don't overstep our limit. There have been requests for other types of activities there, which we would like to have accommodated, like a small wedding or, this memorial for this young woman. And we can't because we have very strict zoning regulations, which forbid it. But we're doing okay with Harbor Light, and maybe now that we've put up the fence and the planters and proved we can be responsible, good citizens in the residential community, maybe we can change those regulations.
Now, when you were on last year, you were talking about the landscaping plan being implemented.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous. It's so nice. It's I'm really, really proud of it. It's beautiful. You should come down.
I should.
Just any day, tell me.
I will. Now that I'm a retiree, I should be able to do it. So that was the first lighthouse, but it was the first of a few. So I guess the second one you got hold of was the Race Rock one?
Oh, such a beautiful lighthouse. Such a terrific, terrific, terrific lighthouse. And the lighthouses, before they're given to nonprofits to fight over, compete for, they're offered to the municipalities. And Race Rock was offered to Fisher's Island. And some people were very much in favor of it, but they said no. So when it was offered, we had heard that a commercial interest was interested in it, and the people on Fisher's Island said it would be so great if you would, go and apply for that. And absolutely, who doesn't love Race Rock Lighthouse? And it's what we do. We preserve the maritime heritage, and sometimes it's a little piece of paper or a letter, and sometimes it's an incredible building. And it makes sense. It's the entrance to Long Island Sound, and it's the first in a series of beacons leading into our historic port of New London. So yeah, it made sense. And we applied, and we had very much the cooperation of the people on Fisher's Island, the Ferguson Museum, Piers Rafferty, who's a friend, and it all worked out really well, and much to our amazement, we were given that lighthouse. Now that lighthouse instantly was in a National Geographic, what do you call it? You could call it Real Housewives of the Lighthouse. It was some sort of terrible fake reality show, but they cleaned the whole thing and restored all the windows. So within months of our receiving the lighthouse, we had it professionally HEPA cleaned and all of that. Now, what's been done since then? Not too much. We had the lawsuit, and then we had COVID. But meanwhile, we commissioned an architectural preservation assessment and a preservation plan, which was released last year. And we had a little fundraiser on Fisher's Island, thanks to the Ferguson Museum. And we were all set to get going this year because we received a $100,000 grant. But the process of working with these, the National Park Service, our friends, is a little laborious, and our architects were not as swift as we might have hoped. They didn't realize, although we did say it was the case, how soon the window closes for when work can be done at Race Rock. So we've had the RFP out, we've had people apply, and we just have to select a contractor and get them lined up for next year. And we have $100,000. And what will we do? We want to make it safe to land, safe to be there, and then start sealing the perimeter, the gutters and all that water penetration.
It's a gorgeous building. It would be great to have tours there.
And we do, but it's really scary sometimes. And we use, gosh, sometimes we use Kennedy Marine, who was ready for anything. He's like loaded for bear, as they say. And we go out with 2 boats. And we go one boat in the middle of everything. You transfer to this little boat, which is right down there on top of the water. You go over, and then you have to step on the edge and climb up a straight ladder. It's not safe. Not many people can do it. And half the time, honestly, 50% of the time, when we have our very limited tours, you get out there and it's just too rough in the race. Which
Yeah, the race is not gentle waters.
No, and so we end up not allowing people to go because it's just too dicey. So one of the first things we wanted to do was to maybe put in some piers that you could tie the boat up to, just some way to keep it from being dashed into the rocks. But we found out last year, one of the many things that Andy Champagne, one of our volunteers, did, and a former trustee, is he did an underwater survey, and some giant boulders, some of those cut boulders that were put in place by T.A. Scott, have somehow washed up right in front of where you land, so you can't have, there's a woman who went last year with a tattoo. She, can you believe that, of race? People, tattoos are very important, personal, what would you call them?
I guess express
Tokens or something. What do you call that when someone does that? Well, it's people have these tattoos of the lighthouses, and I'm always impressed when they show them to us because it means a lot to them.
Yeah.
And so we did get some people out there last year, and this year we didn't have any public tours because we were getting ready to do the construction, and we just didn't get to the construction. One thing that did happen, though, and one thing we knew we had to fix was the railing, and a section of the railing rusted out. So the question is, do we deal with the landing? Do we deal with the railing? Because making sure it's safe for people out there to stand on that platform is like which is a bigger safety issue. It's hard to say.
Yeah, they both seem pretty up there.
Yeah, so those are the 2 main things we're sort of debating. And then the other one is to repoint that drum that it sits on so that the water isn't getting inside and deteriorating the masonry. It seems to be pretty good right now, but that's where Race Rock is.
So the third lighthouse you acquired was Ledge Light.
Ledge Light, everybody's favorite. Well, it is. It's a beloved local. That's right there, right offshore, and it's always in our harbor cam. You know, I always love to zoom out and look at Ledge Lighthouse. That is a wonderful 1909. So that's the most recent of the 3. 1801 current harbor light. 18 maybe 89 is Race Rock. Race Rock. And this one is like 1906 or something, 1909. And it's a great lighthouse. And there is a group that's been, keeping it tidy for years, the Ledge Light Foundation. And when Todd Gipstein moved back here, maybe about the time I came to New London, he revitalized that group, which really hadn't done a lot. And they cleaned it up and they put in these exhibits, and it was all very good. But then he fell off, and it sort of was fallow for a while, and he had COVID. So the lighthouse is not in its best shape, but it's super solid. All 3 of them are solid. We were saying about things built to last.
Yeah.
They were built to withstand the worst, elements.
Sure, you build in the middle of salt water, you're really going to build to last.
Yeah. And so they're really sound, but a couple years ago, the State Port Authority had to give money to somebody to pay for the fact that they took apart T.A. Scott, or the Scott Company's original state pier. So they gave $100,000 to Ledge Light, which was good. That was nice. So Bruce Buckley, who runs that group of a couple of people, he met with a state historic officer, and they said, well, you know, you can double that with a historic preservation grant. So he did do that, and now they have $200,000. And at the same time, we work sort of in partnership with them. We own the building, and we commissioned the historic preservation study and preservation plan from an architect. And using that plan and that expertise, they are going through step by step, and they're going to start doing the restoration, but with $200,000 next year. So, I mean, a lot of things that we would have been on in a more aggressive way, you know, it was just a year of transition, I guess. But my hands were full with the roof at the Custom House.
Well, yeah, and the couple years, especially of COVID, probably had a huge impact on everyone.
Yeah, and the downtown is kind of empty. We don't get a lot of traffic. We don't get we have a wonderful gift shop. We have just a wonderful gift shop, I have to say. And when people know about it, they come in and they do a good shopping job. But people just don't know we're there, and it's a shame.
Now, do you have tours going on to lighthouses at all in the winter now, or is it
Harbor
a
Light
seasonal thing?
No, Harbor Light. I think we might have one. Today's the 19th.
Today's the 19th.
I think we might have one tomorrow.
Oh, good to know.
We have them kind of regularly scheduled on Saturdays and Sundays at 11:45, so you can sign up online. But if you're coming from Massachusetts or wherever these people are from, and they're only in town, you know, before 2 on Thursday or Wednesday, we can usually accommodate that. So Harbor Light, if the weather's not terrible, you can go all year, and it is beautiful. And we have a picture, Christina Corcoran, who gives a lot of the tours. She has a picture last year of somebody scraping the frost off the window and peering out the window up in the lantern room, because people want to go up. People love the lighthouses. It's just, you know, I'm not one of those lighthouse crazy people, although I do love them now. And but there is a big contingent of people who really will travel, and it means a great deal for them to go in and see these lighthouses.
Now, I saw on your website you had some photos from a tour of Little Gull as well.
Oh yeah, we were.
Is that a partnership, or?
Well, that's an interesting one to ask about. So Little Gull, just about the time we had gotten New London Harbor Light, Little Gull went up for sale from the government. What happens is they have a system. They will offer, if they feel a lighthouse is too much trouble, I guess. You know, and they're all active now. All the ones we're dealing with are active aids to navigation, which means the Coast Guard maintains the lantern and the lantern room. That's the Coast Guard's, you know, not well, but they maintain the light. They keep the light going. But we do the maintenance of is what I mean, of the lantern room. So, so these are all active aids navigation, but the Coast Guard is not into maintenance, you know, on these lighthouses, and that's why they give them away. So they gave it away to the East End Seaport Museum, and the East End Seaport Museum took out the fantastic lens, and put it in their little museum, and then they gave back the lighthouse. And so the GSA said, okay, we're going to sell it. We said, no. At that time we had the Lighthouse Kids program, and all the kids write letters and send in pictures and say, we're the best and highest use. That's what you're supposed to go for. We want that museum. That's the other, you know, beacon leading in. There are 4 of them, right? We have we're eyes on these other ones, and this would be the whole complete set. And they said, sorry, we tried a nonprofit and it didn't work, so we're going up for auction. So we said, okay, we need money. We raised $165,000 in like 2 days. I'm not kidding. And we bid 150 because we had to save money, because I don't know, there are no closing costs, but we just very, we're very careful with our dollars, because there is no money for anything else. If we have a special project or something, people will donate, but for the running of the museum and the general, there's no money for that, and there's not a lot of attendance, like I said, or even in the shop, because it's kind of dead downtown. So we were in the lead for about 10 minutes. We bid $150,000. We were in the lead for 10 minutes, and it went up to, I think, $360,000 or $385,000. And it sold to a man, Frederick Plum, nice guy, who liked what we did with the lighthouses, and he wanted to do the same thing with Little Gull, and he did. And one day when he was out there on his jet ski broke. And David Henry, who many local people will know, who's a captain, and his son's a captain, and his father was in the Merchant Marine, and all these things, a big waterfront family. David Henry was going by and rescued him on the ferry he runs out to Plum Island with the workers to Plum Island, and they became friends and hatched a plan to, preserve it. But then what happened? What's going to happen? You sell it, and you don't give it to a wonderful nonprofit. You sell it to an individual, and he died. He died, leaving instructions for his grandchildren and children to carry on. What did they do? Sell it. And they didn't sell it to someone who came forward very generously on our behalf. No, they got a guy from Manhattan who owns a computer company, who's going to make a corporate headquarters, which means a private home that he will call a corporate headquarters, out on the island, which is a big haven for seals now. And we did a nature, sort of a special extended tour there this summer. And it's a wonderful, remote, uninhabited island. And now this private person, it will be private forever. It's the most beautiful lighthouse. Honestly, it's a gorgeous lighthouse with windows all the way down to the floor.
That is a shame.
It's a beauty, and we were hoping he'd give it to us. No, he left it to his family. They said, oh, and the family gave it to the grandchildren to decide, and they said we'd sell it. Meanwhile, though, David Henry has been our local connection, and for the second year, he has allowed us to do tours out there. We used the Fisher's Island, that fast little ferry.
Right.
I love that boat, and it's so much fun. It's like going to Planet of the Apes. You land, and the birds are in charge, and you're just like some weirdo who walks in off the beach. And it is another world, and yet it's right there. You see it. You can see it right out, from Harbor Light. And people love it. And we had another man who went, and it turns out his great-grandfather had been the keeper there. And he had an enormous tattoo right on his arm of Little Gull that he was in the process of getting. And when he was researching the picture, he found our photographs that someone had posted from last year on Facebook or something, and he said, oh my gosh, can I really visit this place? And you could see he was very eloquent about it, and it meant a great deal for him. But we also took out, and it may have been on that same trip, a bunch of birders, including one of the top birders in the state. And it's right next to Great Gull, which is a sanctuary for the roseate terns and endangered species, and all this interesting bird stuff. And so we went out there, and we were there for 4 hours. It was an extended stay so that the bird watchers could really see something. And alas, it was kind of terns and seagulls, gulls, herring gulls, and, black-backed gulls. What else? Not a lot. At the very end, I was walking down to the boat, and how many do we bring out? We didn't have more than 18, because that's all the boat can take, including the guides, of which there were 3 of us. I heard this screaming, and I said, why is anyone screaming on this? It's just us. Why would anyone be? It was the birder. He'd gotten on the back of the boat and set up his scope, and he saw a brown-footed booby. It's a bird from the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh
No one had ever he'd never seen it in Connecticut. It's a very rare sighting. The very last moment of that trip, all of a sudden, there it went, brown-footed booby. The guy was going crazy. It was so exciting. So, that's going to be lost now. Maybe this man will let us do trips. I doubt it. But maybe we'll have one more season before he gets through his zoning permits, which I bet will be a little dicey to build out there, because it's in a marine sanctuary now, and they've got all those seals.
Yeah, and of course, coastal areas have their own set of rules.
Yeah, cormorant nests everywhere. Oh my gosh, it was like Planet of the Apes. It was a very, what people don't understand is how extraordinary a place we live in. And these little islands and these different places you can get to. And we try very hard at the Custom House to get people out, because everybody's mission these days is conservation, right? We gotta save the planet. And if people don't care, but you can get them out on the water, you can make them care about the seals or whatever, maybe that will help. So that's the motivating underlying course to everything we do. Because like I said, I'm not a lighthouse nut, but these people love it. And my gosh, going to that island, it's just an amazing thing. And it's right there. It's right off our shore.
Wow. Okay, I think we better go back to land. And here's the Custom House Museum. And maybe we can show the inside of it as well, at least one picture. I have a few photos of just things that go on inside. But if someone visits,
there we are. Yep.
What do you find there, and what are your hours? And
Yeah.
What are the details for people who want to come to you?
We're open Wednesday. See, there's that beautiful room with that's the original lens from Ledge Lighthouse, and a lens collection and models made by one of our departed but volunteers, Bob Landry. The museum is really a beautiful environment. We have maritime artifacts, most of them local maritime artifacts, but we also have, if you look at that carpet, the treasures that were amassed by one of the whaling families, the Howard family. When the last Howard was dying in New Jersey, she heard about this museum starting, and she said, I want you to take whatever you need to furnish the museum. So it's a very cozy museum, a lot of home type pieces of furniture, beautiful carpets. It's open Wednesday through Sunday from 1 to 5, and on Saturdays opening at 10 a.m. We have a great docents who will take you through the museum, and some care about the Amistad, which is our largest and probably most significant exhibition, but some care about lighthouses. We have a kids exhibit, all sorts of things, and like I said, a really terrific and unusual gift shop with something for everybody, and come and visit.
Yeah, and there are just a few. I know you have open mics,
Christmas.
and you
Open
have
mic,
other
absolutely.
events. Are there any
Jabon.
events coming up?
Well, not before the holidays, because we're going to close for a week. Starting, we're open through Saturday this week, and then we open again on January 3rd.
So just that week between Christmas and New Year, you're all getting a break.
Yeah.
which is a good idea.
I know.
But I did notice that there are events on a regular basis.
Yes.
In addition to all of this photo was from last year, I think.
Yeah,
Some
we
of
brought
the
in a
kids programs that you have here as well through partnership with the schools.
Yeah.
Well, we have 2 minutes, so I wanted to ask, like, if people want to support you,
Yeah.
how can they do it? What are
My
the different
gosh,
ways?
You know, it's a good thing that you asked me today, because just on Sunday I got a QR code, and it's on our website. But there's also a link to a PayPal account, and you can make a donation that way. At 3:00, our email blast is going out about the annual fund, and
Yeah,
boy,
that's
do we
what
need
the,
it this year. Oh, there we are.
website
Yep.
looks like.
And see, it says donate, that yellow button, that pill-shaped button, donate. We have a new online exhibition that Brian Rogers put together about the lighthouses, which is what that top paragraph is about. We had a wonderful tuba Christmas. A week ago, yesterday, we had a party for our docents and also a planning session. And it's a really nice place. I mean, it's a wonderful community center, and I love it, really. So please
And one
come.
thing we really didn't talk about, and we only have about a minute to do it, but you know, you mentioned a couple times how dead the downtown is, and I feel as though sometimes our city misses the opportunity to leverage both the arts community and all of the history of our
Yeah.
city into an economic driver for the downtown. It just seems as though there are some opportunities there that are being missed.
The weird thing is, and in my experience, these things, there's so little that everybody wants theirs. So you have a group, and it's like in a silo. And if we do something good, they want to do the same thing. 2 people do it, it falls apart. And we've had that repeatedly. And so it's not a friendly, supportive environment, I hate to say. I will say Rich Martin with the arts group has been very friendly and is trying, and I hope that works out. We have some nice businesses downtown, small shops, but they're not so much of a draw. But I do love having the Telegraph across the street. Actually, I love snacks. It's the biggest surprise.
Right.
Nobody's more surprised than me. $5, you get a candy bar. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then Sarah Monroe is next door with Studio 33 and the Flavors of Life, you know, the
So
fair
you do
trade
have
fair.
a nice little corner there.
We have a nice corner, and I don't know why they only promote that like 1 week of the year, or 2 weeks, like just before Christmas, because we're always there, and we're always struggling. And it's wonderful people have made an investment, and you're not here because it's easy, you know, and could use a little support. But I do find what happens is people, it's just not a friendly, cohesive.
Well, maybe we need more people to just make a point of going downtown and, you know,
Yeah.
getting to
Yeah.
the shops there, because they're much more interesting places than you can see in a mall.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even more interesting than Mystic, I think. I was there today. That's what I did this morning. I had to interview somebody over there, and you know, it's just they have good things, but New London really has some unique and wonderful places to visit.
Well, thank you for coming on again, Susan.
So nice to see you, Rona.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what we're doing next week, but we're going to continue doing nonprofits and other interesting things that are going on in New London. So we'll see you then, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Happy
You
New Year.
too.
And solstice.
And
Friday.
solstice, yeah.